You know, one of my favorite things on the internet is the "I never thought leopards would eat my face." You know, those owns of the MAGA voters that are shocked, I say, that the man they voted for hasn't personally made their life any better. They had the flags, the tattoos, the bumper stickers, the airbrushed wall art, and every tchotchke known to man to support a face-eating leopard, and they just never thought that that face-eating leopard would eat their face. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think that this week the leopards have finally found Donald Trump, and he is experiencing a little face-eating of his own. And God, what a weird sentence to say, and yet it somehow makes sense because of the glorious, glorious internet. Thank you, internet. But look, the story here is that Big Oil just posted the kind of quarter that gets a CEO a statue. And every dollar of it came out of this war that Donald Trump started for no reason. At the pump, you pay for. Chevron, $12.2 billion in net income, a company record, nearly 5 times what they made in the same quarter last year. Exxon, $14.5 billion, doubled up on last year. Their best quarter since oil went vertical after Russia invaded Ukraine. Combined, those two alone, $26.5 billion in 90 days. It's good work if you can get it. And over in Europe, Shell, they more than doubled to $9.8 billion, second highest in the history of the company. So yeah, look, the Iran war, it crushed Gulf production. Tanker traffic through the Strait of Hormuz collapsed because Donald Trump's back and forth. And refineries in the Middle East went offline on top of that Russian capacity that was already gone. Chevron's refining profit went from $737 million with an M to $4.9 billion with a B. Exxon's refining arm lost $1.3 billion in the first quarter. In the second quarter, $5.5 billion in the positive. And they really didn't do a thing different. They simply scored a premium from this war that was started to distract from the Epstein files that now we cannot win without losing. And all of it is paid for by you and me. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is out there screaming that he wants gas at $2.25 a gallon by the midterms. Of course, the national average is around $4.11 right now. And because he is absolutely underwater in the polls and Republicans are at risk in the midterms because Trump is that unpopular, he is desperate to get gas prices down. And I need to remind you that the last time America averaged $2.25 a gallon was during the pandemic, when nobody was driving anywhere because we were all inside making sourdough and watching documentaries about a man with tigers. Donald Trump wants pandemic prices when he fails to realize that he is the big disease that's impacting the entire globe. So what is he going to do about it? Well, he posts saying, quote, "The big oil companies aren't dropping prices at the pump. Customers are being gouged." And he has instructed the DOJ to immediately start looking into this. Then a week later, saying gasoline retailers must get their prices down immediately, warning of big problems, and tells them to target $2.50 a gallon. And in the same post, he says that there will be no, quote, gauging. Gauging, Gauging. He threatened a federal price gouging investigation, I'm sure, but he can't even spell the crime. And I need to ask you guys, because if push came to shove, who actually wins if this was a fight, if this is Big Oil versus Donald Trump? Because when a company takes your money, funds the grifter, and then ignores him the second that his interests stop matching theirs, who do you think actually holds the power in this country, or hell, in this globe? Drop me a comment and let me know what you think. And let's talk about what these companies have bought. Because oil and gas, they have spent decades near the top of the corporate giving charts, overwhelmingly to Republicans. Why? Because Republicans, especially this administration, have deregulated. They've opened up drilling. They have gutted enforcement. Chevron was even a corporate sponsor of Freedom 250, Donald Trump's own sparsely attended birthday party. And, by the way, that's the same birthday party that is now $10 million over budget, and they are begging Congress for a taxpayer bailout. Chevron was one of the people that wrote a check for that party. And now that Donald Trump needs just one thing from them before a midterm, they're counting their cash, their record profits, and they're telling him to go pound sand, presumably in the Persian Gulf. Chevron has even warned publicly that if Donald Trump restricts exports, it will discourage investment and leave the market with less supply, prices going up. That is not a statement that a company makes when they are working with an ally. That is a company talking down to someone that they see as their employee, because that's all Donald Trump is to them. And my favorite part of all of this, somewhere in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, there are 25 gas stations, and they're opened under something called the Freedom Fuel Network. American flag details, cheap gas, and Donald Trump has announced it on Truth Social and said it's a very smart retailer. And they were doing it because they love the USA. Now, the White House says they aren't involved and they're not subsidizing anything, and no one will say who owns it or how the math is actually working, because if you think about it, they're losing money. Now, there are links to commodities traders and an NFL coach, something called Blue Owl Capital. This whole thing is shady as hell. I think it is just a new way around campaign donations, really. But look, Big Oil, they bought the party, the Republican Party. Then they funded their birthday party. But the second it looks like the president wants a nickel back, they looked right at the president, looked him right in the face, and they started eating it. And subscribe, because I promise you, the next earnings call is going to be even better for these people, and someone will have to get on YouTube and tell you guys about it. And if you really support our mission, we would appreciate it if you guys became members. Our members currently are some of the best people out there, and I cannot thank you enough for supporting independent media.